Alright, well, it's time to wish NATO a happy belated 70th birthday. NATO is basically, at this point, your drunk old uncle who walks into the room with a glass of vodka in one hand and a 45 in the other and starts drunkenly listing from side to side saying, "You're either with us or you're against us. Why, in my day, there was communism, and we had to sacrifice liberty for security, or else the Reds would get us. And you don't know how good you have it now that you don't have communism. I mean, wait, yes, you do, but it's not." And at that point, the comparison breaks down a little, but you get the point. Basically, this is a relic of an age in which it was considered a rational, sane idea to have missiles pointed up the ass of the only other nuclear-armed superpower in the world. Now, of course, everybody and their mother's got nuclear weapons, including now Saudi Arabia. What? Um, so the whole having the nuclear weapons pointed at the ass of Russia is not necessarily the best idea, especially because the whole point of NATO, the reason that NATO was founded 70 long years ago, was to contain the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union, in case you haven't been paying attention, has been around for 30 years? What? So NATO has long outlived its usefulness, and it's probably time for it to be put to bed. Now, I'll elaborate a few reasons why. Basically, NATO was founded, as I said, well, to contain the Soviet Union. That was the cover story. I mean, underneath that was this whole Operation Gladio stay-behind networks, putting all of these sort of leftovers from World War II sort of left in these various countries just in case they got a little too leftist in their thinking. I mean, we had so many assassinations that NATO was actually kicked out of France for trying to kill Charles de Gaulle about 20 zillion times. I mean, they squashed, in their inaugural years, squashed one leftist movement in Italy. Then a couple decades later, they assassinated Aldo Moro. And this is all a matter of public record, by the way. Operation Gladio is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually has been admitted and then quietly sort of swept under the rug. It was actually admitted in 1990, around the same time that the Soviet Union dissolved, so it got pushed off the front page of history by that little debacle. But basically, NATO there's no purpose to this being around anymore. And even countries like Germany that are so, I hesitate to use the word cucked because it places me in a certain political category that I do not belong in. However, when you got a perfect word like cucked, you gotta use it. And Germany is the dictionary geopolitical definition of cucked. When you got a cucked country like Germany, who really doesn't stand up for themselves in any other arena, is now saying that, well, hey, we don't actually want to pay 2% of our GDP towards propping up your stupid multilateral excuse to go to war in countries. That your multinational alliance has got some problems because, dude, I mean, Germany, this is not the ones that are known for spine having. Germany is like cucked. Basically, NATO exists as a way to just sort of needle Russia and try to get Russia to do something stupid. Fortunately, Russia is run by somebody who basically has a pretty steady hand right now. But I mean, who knows who's going to come next? I mean, before him, it was Boris Yeltsin, who was literally the guy with the thing of vodka in one hand and the 45 in the other. I mean, Boris Yeltsin was a total disaster, and of course, he was washing to this disaster, so we liked him a lot. But yeah, basically, NATO exists to poke the bear and do things like set up bioweapons labs on the border in Georgia, where there's like dudes carrying briefcases full of anthrax in and out all day. I'm sorry, like any sane world leader is not going to want to have bioweapons labs full of like 10,000 different anthraxes being carried in dudes' briefcases in and out. I mean, what if one day they just kind of like leave the briefcase there and then whoops, a wild animal comes along and opens the briefcase and oh no, all the anthrax is all over the place now. Would be a shame if any of that anthrax got like, in Russia or something. Just could never happen. I mean, we have such strong security. I mean, our password isn't even password anymore. Now it's 1234567A. No one's ever gonna guess that. But basically, Russia's not the problem. I mean, NATO, they try to make it now that, like, oh, well, we still need NATO because, like, Russia's bad and we need to contain Russia. Well, the whole point of NATO was to contain Russia as communism. Like USSR was a communist country, and then NATO was supposed to be this like bastion of capitalism and holding off the Red Menace. Well, the Red Menace is no more. Basically, in Europe, there's no communism anymore, and even most leftist movements are really rather well behaved. I mean, we had Syriza in Greece, and that like immediately just fell to pieces as soon as the IMF showed up and started making noises like, we want austerity, and Syriza, which was all like, we hate austerity, austerity's bad, and then IMF was like, but we really want austerity, and so he was like, okay, you can have austerity, we don't really have a spine. But NATO, like I said, has outlived its usefulness. It's a point of like, what is this army for in the first place? Like, what is one could ask the same question of the U.S., of course. What is the U.S. Army for? If not to defend national borders, well, we've decided we don't want to do that anymore because that's racist, to defend national borders. Now, don't get me wrong. I believe that Trump's whole build the wall thing is completely stupid and self-aggrandizing, just another large structure to slap his name on before he shuffles off this mortal coil. However, I do think that like the purpose of an army is to defend one's national borders and not to go fighting wars halfway around the world for Israel or for Saudi Arabia or for whoever happens to be paying their bills these days. Usually it's Israel, who actually isn't really paying the bills, so it's like, why are they even fighting for Israel? But I digress. Once again, basically, if you're not even going to defend your own borders, then why do you have a military in the first place? Why are you spending more than the next 12 countries put together, or whatever the statistic is? I think it's 12. It doesn't make any sense. And so you're asking these countries to throw in 2% of their GDP towards funding NATO, which is the standing army that, for what? Russia's not invading anybody. I mean, you can say, oh, Russia invaded Crimea. No, Crimea voted to join Russia because we meaning the U.S., those little troublemakers, sponsored a coup in Ukraine that put a bunch of fascists in power that were deciding to go around and oppress ethnic Russians. And so ethnic Russians, quite wisely, I think, decided to have a little referendum and say, we're screwed if we don't join Russia. And Putin said, yes, you probably are, but welcome back. And because Crimea used to be part of Russia. They don't like to tell you that. And Eastern Ukraine is thinking the same thing, like, hey, these fascists are not so cool. Maybe we don't want to be part of them anymore. But unfortunately, that saga is still ongoing. And now what? I don't even know who's won the Ukrainian election, so I'm not going to comment on that. But, I mean, the guy who was in the lead, okay, I said I wasn't going to comment on that. I lied. The guy who was in the lead was because he played a president on television. So that makes Donald Trump look like a totally reasonable, normal event in world history because, like, what the fuck, you play a dude on television and you get to be the dude. Okay, that's cool. I guess I should, like, I should audition for roles to play some sort of deity on television, and then maybe I will get to be a god. That would be pretty awesome. But I digress. I seem to be doing that a lot tonight. I don't know why. Anyway, the whole point of NATO, which you'd be forgiven for not knowing that it stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization, because it's not really North Atlantic anymore. I mean, they're dangling membership in front of Jair Bolsonaro, which they're foolishly trying to call the Trump of Brazil. No, he's like the Mussolini of Brazil. Like, he's straight up fascist. This is a guy who has nostalgia for the Death Squad era. One, because he was with those Death Squads back in like the 60s and 70s when Brazil was ruled by a military junta. He was part of that military, and he was nostalgic. He thinks that democracy is not the best way to run a country, and that we should really go back to this whole Death Squad, like, military rulership thing. And he makes no secret of that. Now, one aside on Jair Bolsonaro, and you'll forgive me for some baseless speculation here, because normally, I stick to the facts. I don't run off on wild flights of fancy. However, Jair Bolsonaro almost died when he was stabbed, supposedly by a leftist, in the middle of some public event, and he almost died, right? So, like, he had a big gaping stab wound. Wouldn't have been so hard. He insisted on being taken to the Jewish hospital, the Albert Einstein hospital, because he thought he wasn't going to be safe at the Catholic hospital. And as we know, Jair Bolsonaro is a big, big booster of Zionism. He loves him some Israel. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem. It was the only the third country to do that after, I think, Guatemala and the U.S. I think he was the third. There might have been another one, but maybe Honduras too, which is another one of these U.S. propped up fake Latin American regimes. And so he really loves him some Israel. And like, would it be so? If you look at a picture of Jair Bolsonaro, can you find one that he doesn't look like a zombie? By the way, because like I've written a couple articles about this guy for my day job, and we look on Reuters to illustrate articles, and I can't find a single picture of him where he doesn't look like he's just crawled out of the grave and his skin is rotting off his body. Now that's a little weird for a guy who almost died. Like, is it so far-fetched to say that he actually did die and, like, was brought back to life as some sort of, like, Brazilian golem creature to, like, sway the continent towards Israel, where all things must eventually end up? Okay, baseless speculation over. And I would actually argue that that wasn't that baseless of speculation. I mean, it's as simple. It's got a big hole. You just put a whatever the scroll that they use to make golems in it, and you have yourself a Bolsonaro golem. Well, golly gee, that's not actually that unreasonable to think about. I mean, the guy is like rotting body. But anyway, so he shows up in the U.S. and the first thing he does is visit the CIA. Before he even visited Trump, the guy who he supposedly modeled himself after. Now, he modeled himself after like Mussolini or whatever military dictator he was working for back in the day. But yeah, so he visits the CIA, and like then now he's talking about, oh well, Venezuela can't continue along the path it's continuing on. Gosh, that's a nice country you've got there, Maduro. Would be a shame if anything happened to it. Jimmy Dore stole my routine. No, that's okay, Jimmy Dore. You can have my routine. You deserve it. So like it's really no surprise that he shows up on the CIA's doorstep, and then all of a sudden is spouting this regime change propaganda, even though he was surprisingly not willing to let the U.S. stage an invasion from his border. Now we'll see if that's still the case now, because I have a feeling it's not, and like I said, we'll see if that's still the case. But yeah, this idea that it's North Atlantic Treaty Organization. No, they've been engulfed half of Eastern Europe now, and that's not North Atlantic anything. They've got Turkey in there, and speaking of Turkey, this is proof of how flimsy and useless NATO is that Turkey was threatened with the loss of their NATO status if they decided they were going to buy these S-400 missile setups from Russia. And because they were supposed to buy these F-35s from the U.S., and then they said, F-35 kind of sucks. Maybe we should get some of these S-400s. And the S-400 is pretty superior. I mean, everybody wants them, right? But you can't have both, apparently, because, the U.S., as I've written before, I'll link to this in the description because it's a good article that I don't think enough people read. But the U.S. is like a jealous boyfriend. Basically, if he can't have her, nobody will. And so he will gladly cut off the nose to spite his face, or rather shoot his girlfriend in the face, just to prevent anyone else from having a go at her, and or her from having a go at anybody else, to make it in a more feminist discourse. But basically, yeah. So Pence comes out and says, well, Turkey, you're making a terrible decision. Like, you're throwing away being part of the most awesome military alliance the world has ever known. Those are almost his exact words. I'm not getting it right because I don't have a photographic memory, or really much of a memory at all. But he did say something like that, and Turkey was like, yeah, dude, go fuck yourself. I'm going to get me some S-400, and you can take those F-35s and stick them where the sun don't shine. And that was what happened. Pence took those F-35s, and he stuck them where the sun does not shine. And lo, the world was a better place. No, actually, I don't think Turkey even got a refund for the F-35s, which is, like, really fucked up, because those bitches are expensive. But they also don't really work. I mean, the U.S. has not got a great sort of track record with planes recently. I mean, this whole Boeing debacle. But, yeah, that's neither here nor there. And I think that's pretty much all for this video. I mean, yeah. Ain't no reds under the bed. Time to go home.